It's NJ Libertarian at NJ underscore Libertarian with Free Radical Network. This is Radical Roundtable on FRN. Tonight I have with me Ben Jones and Mark Hayden. It is Hayden, yes?
Yes, right.
I did screw up the name. From Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty. This is an interesting group, at least to me. I met you guys. I'm not sure if it was you guys specifically. I'm sure you were there at CPAC this year, and I know you guys have been, making the rounds at all the big conventions and talking to a lot of people. And I'm very interested to talk to you guys. It's a this sort of anti-death penalty, pro-life cause is interesting, and I think it's something that has the opportunity to pull more people into the movement, into the conservative movement, or have less reasons not to join. So I'm excited to have you guys on. To start things off, let's go with Mark. Basically, can you tell us a little bit about Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty?
Absolutely, and JD, thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here. It was great seeing you at CPAC, and it was great meeting some of your other colleagues at CPAC St. Louis, where we were also exhibiting. But just in a nutshell, Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty is a national network of conservatives and libertarians who feel that the death penalty is just inconsistent with their philosophies, with their principles, and with their founding tenets.
Very good. It's an issue that's gone back a very long time. The idea that you're actually trusting the government to go out and kill people because of evidence, there have been enough government screw-ups and a lot of different things to make you want to second guess exactly what's going on before they pull that final trigger, or stick in that final solution, as it is. You guys started off in Montana in 2010. How was that like, starting in a red state of all places, Mark?
Well, it started out because several legislators at the state level came together and they realized that they all had issues with the death penalty because it was inconsistent with their values. And as they saw there was more and more like them, even though they were Republicans, they were conservatives, it was for the reasons that they are a conservative, that they were a Republican, is why they were opposed to the death penalty. And as they found out there was more and more, the group grew to it became critical mass. And there was very large grassroots support for that. And as other states saw the successes of that group, it's actually what prompted us to start a national Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty group, which we debuted at CPAC earlier this year, just 3 years after the Montana group founded at the Montana GOP convention.
That's awesome. The fact that this is just your first year, it's cool to get you guys right out of the gate. It's difficult. It's a little bit harder to talk to maybe some of the guys at AFP or Heritage or some of the other groups. Particularly, I mean, immediately comes to mind, Heritage. It's difficult to get people from there. Ben, you are not from the Montana area. You're actually you're in Kansas, yes?
Yeah, I'm here in Kansas.
Awesome.
And
so what got?
Yeah, been working at. Go ahead.
I was just asking you what got you interested in this movement. How'd you get to be with the group?
I grew up in a conservative household and was strongly in favor of the death penalty. I can remember back in high school arguing with my classmates, making the case that we needed the death penalty. And it was one of those things that I didn't want to let go of, wanted to hang on to it. And then I started learning about wrongful convictions, innocent people being sentenced to death row. And that bothers you, but really what bothered me even more were hearing these cases where evidence would come out, that compelling evidence that the guy's innocent, and you hear prosecutors still fighting tooth and nail to sentence someone to death, to get them executed. And when I government abusing that power in that way really bothered me, and that's what changed my mind. I became anti-death penalty, and it was also, growing up in a pro-life household, being against abortion, um, started to see the connection more. If we keep this power in place, we risk executing an innocent person and shouldn't take that risk. So that's what changed my mind, and it was a gradual process. Had some buddies in college who would take me to some anti-death penalty events, and I was in grad school in Connecticut and really got involved in the campaign there. Was on staff there for a few years, and we got a bill passed in 2012, and then got involved with Equal Justice USA, conservatives concerned about the death penalty, and have been out in Kansas trying to build momentum here and doing a lot of work with conservatives, especially young Republicans, Young Americans for Liberty, where there's a lot of enthusiasm and support for this issue.
Yeah, I know some people from Young Americans for Liberty, and I'm certainly glad that there's some crossover with you guys. Mark, you have been with this group for a long time. What did you just come in with the initial push from Montana?
No, actually, Heather Bodwin, who's my direct supervisor, was there at its inception in Montana. I actually came here in January, a few months before we officially debuted nationally. And I came here, I actually worked for the National Rifle Association in Florida. I ran several congressional and state-level campaigns before that for GOP candidates, conservative candidates. And I worked as a Georgia State Senate staffer. So I've kind of moved around, and, to talk about Ben, he went into how he changed his view of the death penalty, and I had a different journey. I believe that the death penalty, or conservatism, is based on pro-life policies, limited government, and fiscal responsibility. And once I finally gave the death penalty what I call the conservative litmus test to see how it stood up against those, I saw that it failed each one. It's not pro-life because you run a real risk of killing innocent people. If an innocent person is killed by the hands of the government, it's hard to say that's pro-life. I don't care who you are. You can't say that. And I don't believe it's limited government because it gives the states so much power. And they've shown to not be very good with power. I think we can all agree with that. And it's far more expensive than life without parole. So it's not fiscally responsible. And I had accepted those three things, but I really didn't want to let go of the death penalty because I thought, that it's something I want to hold on to. I had that emotional response. So I said, at least I can say that it's a deterrent. And several studies have come out and shown that it, in fact, is not a deterrent. I'm in Atlanta, or from Atlanta, and it's the South that uses the death penalty the most, but we have the highest murder rates. If it was, in fact, a deterrent, the state that uses it the most, Texas, would have the lowest murder rates, which is not the case. So that's where I made the journey. And then eventually I had an opportunity to come with conservatives concerned about the death penalty to work for them, and it's been fantastic ever since.
That's kind of crazy that you went from being a staffer going through you to take the path, and this is what's really interesting to me is that both of you guys came to this issue from conservative bases. This wasn't you were initially against the death penalty and then you shifted over time to being conservative. This is not a sort of an olive branch from the anti-death penalty guys, even though your parent organization, joint organization, whatever, is a single issue on this particular topic. You guys actually were coming from conservatism first, and then joining this issue. That's something that I think is very, that gives you guys a lot more credibility than maybe otherwise would be the case. I know personally the reason that I'm against it. This might be a little bit out of left field here, but the reason why it's not appealing to me personally, I'm an atheist, which is kind of another one of those weird, not necessarily 100% conservative for whatever reason. People don't think of there being a lot of conservative atheists, but to me, it's horrible when we're talking about abortion to remove somebody's life that I believe is their only life. But I also think that there are a lot of people out there that have this sort of sick comfort that they'll be fine in death. There are quite a few out there. Like if we were to have captured Osama bin Laden instead of killing him, uh, there would have been just like we're experiencing with the Fort Hood shooter. These guys want death. It's something that they are looking forward to. It's not even really a punishment in certain cases. So it's disgusting that in certain events, certain cases, you're actually giving the criminal, the person who you've sentenced, what they want. That's not something I'm cool with. And it also, you know, being a pro-life individual, I think it's much easier to argue your pro-life points by being universally pro-life. And you know what? As you said, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to have somebody in a box for the rest of their life, giving them food and water, than to have them in this state of flux on death row. Are they going to get killed? Are they not? Paying for their defense. It's just it gets ridiculous. So that's why I personally am anti-death penalty. At least a few of the reasons. Obviously, those that you guys have brought up before fit just as well. So you guys, this year was your first year going around. Mark, you sound like you want to respond. Was there something that you were?
Well, I wanted to add to that. You had talked about cost, and that's something we're hearing from a lot of people we're working with. I had the opportunity to sit down with Tennessee State Representative Steve McManus out of Memphis. He's a very conservative guy, and he looked me in the eye and said, it's about time conservatives walk the walk. It's time we get real on conservative issues and fiscal conservatism, especially when it comes to the death penalty. So that is something we're seeing with everybody. Conservatives, I think, for a long time believed that they could support a death penalty system because we thought we could make it work and we could have it foolproof. But we've seen there's mistake after mistake, and it's incredibly costly. So you're echoing what we're hearing as we're going around. I believe conservatives are embracing their roots, and that's why they're coming against the death penalty.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think it was an article quoting Burke, I believe that you guys shared a couple months back. I know it was a very interesting read, basically saying that giving the state the ability to kill people because they committed a crime, that's some seriously dangerous stuff when it comes to government overstep and just the powers granted there. It's sketchy for a group of people who believe in limited government. That's given people a lot of leeway. And already, by the way, the questions are starting to come in like crazy, and I want to get to those in a bit. But before that, I want to talk about the response that you guys have been getting. This is your first year of existence on a national level, and you've been out making the rounds at the various conventions in the nation, the conservative conventions. What has the response generally been? From not necessarily from the bigger guys. I don't know how many of those public figures you've talked to, but from the activist level, the people who show up at CPAC and at these various places, what has the response been?
Well, it's been overwhelmingly positive. At CPAC, the most common thing we heard is, where have you guys been for so long? We thought we were the only conservatives that supported repealing the death penalty. We had another person walk up to our booth, stop in their tracks, drop their bags, and walk up and hug us and thank us for being there. And we're seeing a lot of this. I know in CPAC St. Louis, we saw someone from the National Association for Gun Rights who came up to us and said, I've been waiting a long, long time for an organization like you. And that's what we're seeing. I keep going back to conservatives are going to their roots, and that's why they're coming out against the death penalty. And that's what we're seeing. I was a little nervous, I won't lie, when I first went to CPAC, because that's when we had our debut, and I was a little worried. I wasn't sure if every other conservative was going to see it like I'm seeing it. And I left there with a huge grin and with hundreds of names of people that wanted to sign up to volunteer and stay in contact with us. I was also able to sit down with many grass tops leaders. I spoke with Michael Steele, the former RNC chairman and lieutenant governor of Maryland. He opposes the death penalty. We've been able to work with Jay Sekulow from the American Center for Law and Justice, who's with us with 100%. Ron Paul endorsed our actions. And came out against the death penalty, and Brent Bozell. And the list just goes on and on and on. Conservatives are coming out against the death penalty in droves.
Brent Bozell, really? That is surprising to me. I would not have expected Brent Bozell to come out against the death penalty. That's an interesting name. The other names I can understand, but Brent Bozell, that's a shocker to me. Ben, you are more on the ground floor of getting out there on an activist level, not at the conventions necessarily. You have more of a local outreach angle, right? What has the response been just in the community, in the conservative community overall?
It's right along with Mark. It's been overwhelmingly positive, and I think there's this perception, and it goes back to the '90s when crime rates were on the rise. Politicians, both on the left and the right, were saying how strongly they supported the death penalty. That was evidence that they were tough on crime. And it was really a Democrat who led the way in doing this. It was Bill Clinton, who expanded the federal death penalty. And sometimes when you talk to politicians, especially ones that have been there a while, or people active in the party, there's this wariness about this issue. Like, oh, maybe I don't know how my constituents will react. This is a controversial, hot-button issue. But then when you actually go to like the grassroots level and you talk to people active in the local GOP, you talk to student organizations, Young Republicans, Young Americans for Liberty, there's a real willingness to discuss this. You find a lot of folks are supportive. They're 100% with you. They want to get involved. They see an opportunity to be a leader on this issue because there hasn't been much discussion. It's not an issue that's been on the front burner in politics in recent years. And they look at it, they see the fiscal waste, they see it's not consistent with promoting a culture of life. They're like, we can be real leaders and as conservatives and working to get rid of this program or this broken government system. So I still think among politicians, some of them, are a little wary and they say, well, maybe this is controversial. But when you talk to folks at the grassroots level, there's a much greater openness in dealing with this issue, having presentations, and putting in energy and time to get rid of it. So, that's going to be the way the party and conservatives are going to go. It's where are the grassroots, where are young people, and when you look at that level, everything's incredibly positive.
That actually raises a really interesting question to me. How many of the people that you talk to have just been like, why this issue? Why? I mean, we've got Obamacare, we've got so many other different. We've got a huge deficit. We've got a debt that's exceeding $17 trillion. Why is it this issue that we should address now? I mean, why is now the right time to address the death penalty as an issue? This is, I guess, let's go with Ben first, and Mark, if you want to jump in at the end.
I do get that sometimes. I mean, people are very busy. There's a lot of issues that they're working on. You mentioned some of them, and you could add 10 and 20 items to that list. But our emphasis is, just give a little time to this issue. Let's start a discussion at least. And people are interested in that because some people come in with the mindset, if I'm conservative, then I guess I'm supposed to support the death penalty, but I don't really know why because it doesn't match up with our principles. Yes. And so when they come across...
It's not like buying a cable package and choose your issues.
Right. But when they come across conservatives, people they respect, who are, against the death penalty, and they start to learn why, they're intrigued by that. And I think they respect the motivations of a lot of people working on this issue. And that really, helps open the door and, lets us begin those discussions and start engaging people on this issue.
Awesome. Mark, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have been asked why now, and I think you hit the nail on the head with you're talking about our debt problem. This adds to it. This costs billions of dollars, and we already have ballooning debts. This is another expensive program that's a complete failure. So that's one reason. Another reason is conservatives, I believe, have kind of gone away from their principles, and they're having an identity crisis. And this is one of the things where they're coming back to the roots on, as I keep coming back to it. So there's no better time than now. And the longer we have this program, the more chances we have to having more innocent people executed. We can't have that. It doesn't matter what time it is. We need to move to action for that.
And it's never the wrong time to do the right thing.
That is very good. That is a very good point. Before we go on to questions, because there are a lot of questions, and I get the feeling that this is going to be a fun one as far as that goes. Can you give me a high profile case, or even a low profile? In fact, it's better if you have a low profile case in your back pocket that you can give where the death penalty has shown just how messy and wrong, and the fact that the government is has their tendrils in it, that where it's been misused. I mean, obviously, I don't think that there's any proper use for it, but can you give me an example of a case that has really made the point for the anti-death penalty cause?
Well, I don't think there's really any shortage of cases. We've seen lots of them. There have been cases where people have been posthumously pardoned because they found out that they were innocent. One of the cases that jumps out to me is Carlos de Luna. He was executed based on the eyewitness account from one person who later said they were 50% sure that he was the guy. 50% really. So that's not exactly beyond a reasonable doubt. Claude Jones, he was executed based on hair analysis, which has since been shown to not be scientific, and later DNA testing showed it wasn't his hair after all. There's Todd Willingham, that they used, quote, fire science to determine that it was arson, that he had killed his 3 daughters. And it turned out that science was not science at all. It was opinion at best, and it looks like it was a tragedy, not arson at all. So there are many cases. There's no shortage of cases that show that the government is abusing this program and misusing it. And, of course, I don't think that there's any right use for it.
I'll add one case. One death row exoneree I know is Juan Melendez, and he was sentenced to death in Florida. And what his case really illustrates is just how messy the trial and legal process can be, and all the things that can go wrong. So in his case, he was wrongfully convicted of a murder, and there was actually a taped confession from the actual killer. The prosecutor knew about this tape. His own defense attorney knew about this tape, but it never came up at trial, and it was suppressed, and his own attorney never brought it up. And it was by chance that years later, he has new investigators, much better lawyers, but he's also getting very close to being executed, so time is running out. And by the grace of God, they stumble across this tape. It gets entered into court, and he ends up being exonerated. But people think everyone gets a fair trial, and but in so many cases, there were huge problems with how the trials are run, and the problem of suppressed evidence is a very difficult one to solve, because if you don't know that evidence is out there, how do you fix that problem? If it's hidden by the prosecutors, it's a almost impossible problem to solve, and there's too many of these cases where you run across that.
All right. I think if there's anything that you guys would like to add before we go into questions, go for it. Otherwise, I will jump right in.
Let's jump right in.
The first question I have here, this is saved from very early on in the discussion, from Fishy in the chat. My question: what are the biggest objections conservatives have to letting go of the death penalty?
I think there's this feeling that supporting the death penalty makes you tough on crime, and I think some people struggle with that, think that they're going to look weak on crime. But it's very possible to be tough on crime and be smart on crime too, and the death penalty is not a smart program.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good response to that. All right, George Templeton in the chat says that his objection is that certain crimes are heinous enough to demand the ultimate penalty. So,
there are a lot of heinous crimes, and the death penalty is supposed to be there for heinous crimes. But you see people like Jeffrey Dahmer and Charles Manson don't get the death penalty, while people like Carlos de Luna do. Where's the fairness in that? This is a program you can support, in theory, putting to death heinous crimes, people who commit heinous crimes, but that's just not how it works. This is a system that's put in place by the government that just does not properly function.
You could pull off the list, any state that you're in, and look at the folks that receive life in prison without parole, look at their crimes, and then get the list of folks that receive the death penalty. It would be very difficult to distinguish, why are these crimes deemed more heinous than the other set of crimes? And, we just haven't done a very good job of picking out the, quote, worst of the worst. And I don't, I personally have problems with that, that whole idea, because what we end up doing is saying, well, some lives are more valuable than others. Like for these victims, we're going to seek the death penalty, but for these other victims, we're not. And whenever we start making distinctions about life in that way, I think we run into trouble.
I think that's an interesting thing to bring up. The idea that you would be valuing one less than the other, and the same thing with crimes. When it comes to something, what's the distinction being made between a crime that elicits the death penalty and one that just is life imprisonment? There's some interesting differences there. This is a question that has been asked a bunch of times. This is just one of the iterations of it. The death penalty shuts the revolving door at prisons. That's something I just don't personally. I don't give any credence to. I don't think that there's any evidence to support that.
One thing to remember about capital cases is that it's a very small set when you look at the entire universe of murder cases. So there'll be hundreds of murders in a state, and then you may get a dozen death penalty cases or so. And for instance, in Nebraska, there's a debate going on right now on what to do with their prison population. They're at 150% of capacity, so they have a real problem there. They need to either build more prisons or find a way to control their prison population. And there's been, some people say, well, we just need to recommit to the death penalty in Nebraska, and that will fix the problem. There's like a dozen people on Nebraska's death row. That's not going to fix the problem. Yes. And what the death penalty ends up doing is you end up putting a disproportionate number of resources in a very small number of cases. And if you only have a limited number of dollars to put towards law enforcement, it's very clear that there are smarter, more intelligent ways to use that money to keep society safe, rather than throwing it into a bunch of cases that, in all likelihood, in many cases, the sentences get overturned 10 or 15 years later, anyways.
Here's another one. For humans as a social species, I like this question. For humans as a social species, isn't it more cruel removing them from others than it is to kill them? This is coming from a cruelty perspective. Is it more cruel to just imprison somebody for life than it is to just kill them, to just off them?
Well, that's a deeper philosophical question. It depends on the individual. I can't answer that because I can't speak for everybody else. I can say with all certainty that the prison system is not cushy, as I have heard some people say. I read a recent study that said that for the first time in history, in the United States, more men were raped than women, and that was directly correlated to the prison population. So, being in prison obviously is not a fun place. Being put to death obviously is very very frightening as well, though.
Personally, the idea that it is more cruel to keep them in prison is appealing to me on some level when it comes to especially the serious cases. This one is about the Bin Laden issue. Giving a vile murderer what he wants isn't a problem. In the case of Bin Laden, it would have been fun trying to get intelligence out of him, then doing him. There is a distinction there. Yeah, not every single criminal is going to be searching for death, but as we just talked about, it's not fun being in prison. It's just not. So there's to some people it might be after a point in time nicer for them. They might want to opt to end their lives out of their own disgust in jail. Well, I guess I shouldn't be answering these questions. You guys are here specifically to answer these questions, so I'll let you guys get the next one. Okay.
First, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. First objection: we might accidentally execute an innocent person. How many proven innocent people have been executed? Do we have a list? Is there a number? Can you put that on? Can you put that? There were over 800,000 babies aborted in 2009. Do you have a number for me of innocent people that have been proven to be innocent that have been executed?
So the key issue in this question is, what time period are you looking at? So how far back do we want to look to make that determination? We were executing witches in New England,
I think for the
centuries ago, and obviously we executed some innocent people there.
For the sake of
at the beginning,
let's try to keep it to the last, say, 40 some odd years. I think that's a pretty good time span to really worry about these things.
Yeah, so most people focus on, since the death penalty has been reinstated in the U.S. Back in 1976, have we executed any innocent people? And there have been a number of cases where there's pretty compelling evidence that an innocent person may have been executed. And sort of the best place to go, I think it's the Northwestern Center for Wrongful Convictions, and they have a list, and I believe they have 18 cases listed there, where the evidence is pretty compelling that we may have made a mistake in these cases. So that's a good place to go. You can look at that list, look at the details in each of those cases, and judge for yourself. To think, see if you believe any of those people were innocent. One problem is that when we do have posthumous pardons, exonerations, usually they come decades, many decades after the wrongful execution. And it's very clear why. I mean, if the government makes a mistake, kills an innocent person, they don't have much of an incentive to look into that case and say, oh, look, we made a mistake, and then risk all the political fallout from that. So it usually takes many decades for that evidence or I guess recognition of wrong to come. Evidence of innocence has come to light in many cases, but it's taken many, many years for the government to admit that it's made a mistake.
I think that's the fact that it's 18. Honestly, to me, I'm very interested to see. I mean, that's 18 cases that you think have some good, that have actually come out as having some serious question marks. I'd be curious to see of the rest of the cases where the death penalty was used. I mean, I am very skeptical of that. I would like to see the rest of the uses of the death penalty and just get into those numbers a little bit and see there's a very good possibility that it's more than 18, but still 18 is too many to me. I mean, that's 18 innocent people that were, where the evidence is good that they are innocent. That's a lot of people to die with no real reason. It's that the government kills for no good reason. That's messy. This next question, let's see here, also from Robert Stubbs. He's an interesting guy. It costs more. Second objection: it costs more to execute someone. Why does it cost so much to execute someone? Is it because they have so many chances to appeal? Therefore, the reason it costs so much is because, oh my gosh, this is a long one. Because they have so many chances to prove that they are innocent.
No, Robert, I do appreciate that question. I get it a lot. The main reason that it's so expensive is the initial trial. A recent study in Colorado found that it's 6 times longer just in time than a similar trial with the sentence of life without parole. Then you have more costs when it comes to specialists, more attorney's fees. And the thing that makes capital cases so special is they have a separate trial just to determine whether or not you can be put to death. And that racks up costs very quickly. Then there is the appeals process, which is much longer than most other appeals processes. And if that appeals process wasn't there, many of the 142 people that have been released and exonerated since 1976 would be put to death. So if you get rid of that appeals process, you virtually guarantee that many of them would have been put to death by the government. And then beyond that, it's more expensive to house them on death row. It's much more expensive. If they were in general population, maximum security prison, you'd be saving a lot more money.
And I just want to point out again, you're saying that it's, this is the government that is putting these people to death. Anytime that I hear government and putting people to death, when it's not in the immediate context of our enemies and people who are attacking us, actively, that makes me a little bit uneasy. It's just always a. Sorry, go ahead.
I have had questions in the past. I've had questions in the past where people will talk about the numbers of people that have been possibly wrongfully executed and the ones that have been wrongfully convicted, and the ones that support the death penalty go, well, out of how many? But the real thing is, if one person is killed who is innocent, that makes the government no better than the offenders that they're trying to protect us against.
This is a question just asked in the chat. Oh, darn it! I put it in the queue, not on the screen. Andrew Clavin and John Grisham, she thinks, both have written novels involving wrongful conviction with death penalty issues. Is that affecting the issue culturally? Is there a cultural momentum for abolishing the death penalty?
I think so. In the late 90s, the issue of innocence got a lot more attention than in the past. Illinois was ground zero for this. You had a number of death row exonerations. You had a Republican governor there who said he wasn't going to sign any more death warrants because there had been too many cases where an innocent person was on death row and was exonerated in Illinois. And so you had, it just seemed like all the time another case where you saw someone being released from prison, DNA evidence, other evidence coming out showing that, they didn't do it. And that really, I think that made people doubt a lot more the how accurate our criminal justice system is. We still have a great system of criminal justice in terms of comparing it to other countries in the world. But it's still run by humans. It's not perfect. And people really began to recognize that when they saw in the news repeatedly exonerations from death row and other prisoners. And then you've seen, this also be a theme in popular culture with, books by Grissom and others.
All right.
And that's really helped our work because we don't need to convince people at this point. They recognize the system makes mistakes and that innocent people end up on death row.
And this is something that a lot of people in the chat sort of have jumped up on. And this is not the first time it's been asked, but this is the question this is certainly the most thorough. I've been waiting for that one. If one person is killed, it's no better than. That does that not extend to imprisoning people? Should we not imprison anyone if there's a chance we imprison one person wrongfully? So, it's...
I'll tell you, there's a distinct difference, and I understand where that question is coming from. But the distinct difference is life is sacred, especially innocent life is sacred. You have a chance to release somebody from jail if you get it wrong, but if you execute an innocent person, you can't give that person their life back. That's the difference.
That's a pretty succinct answer, and I would like it if George has anything further on that. I would definitely like to see a response to that, because that, to me, you can release somebody from jail, they can sue you, and they can get some stuff back, some money back, sure, you can't really give them their time back, but you can give them other stuff. But it's pretty final when you kill somebody, they are dead. Except if we're talking about voting, if you kill somebody, they still can vote. In New Jersey, Chicago, and some other places. From Fishy, we have huge. We've had a huge crime lab scandal in Houston, completely mismanaged and multiple erroneous results. Is this something, the idea that there's a lot of, so sometimes you have issues when it comes to evidence coming in being wrong. Is this something that that happens a lot? Is this something that you see a lot in these cases?
There's an issue with forensics. There's always some new evidence that's coming out showing that forensic evidence that they rely on doesn't work. The FBI is actually doing a study on over 20 cases that were convicted, or they were capital cases, and they relied on hair analysis. And this hair analysis has since been proven to be unscientific, and that may have led to the execution of several people. There's other evidence that has been found to not be scientific, the fire science that I talked about earlier. So no, this is a recurring problem, and we're finding that in the case of the hair analysis, the FBI knew that there were problems with this, but they withheld that from their testimony, and they did not tell the juries that there was problems with this analysis.
George,
and just one quick point, there have been examples of people working in crime labs tampering with evidence, and as great as DNA is, and as great of a tool as it is for law enforcement, when somebody tampers with evidence and pins a crime on the wrong person, that's something we'll always have to deal with, because humans will make mistakes. There'll be corruption. There'll be abuse in the system, and that's, I think, another strong reason why we shouldn't have an irrevocable penalty like capital punishment.
This is George's response to his previous to your response to his previous question. There isn't a difference. You are right. You can't undo the damage of an execution, but ask Darrell Washington, who was wrongfully imprisoned for rape for 18 years. Money doesn't undo that. Again, this is not the guy is not dead. He can actually go out and try and live somewhat of a normal life. I mean.
And yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, you're not going to give him back his time, obviously, but you can let him have the rest of his life, which you can't do with somebody who's wrongfully executed.
And we've worked with a lot of death row exonerees, and I don't want to minimize the damage and the trauma that they go through being on death row for a crime they never committed. I can't imagine going through what they've been through. But, I've also seen them come out of prison and do incredible things, like have an opportunity to make real change, make policy change to ensure that, someone doesn't end up in the same position that they did. And one way that many exonerees talk about repealing the death penalty is they see it as an innocence reform, and that it's not the only innocence reform, and there's other things you need to do to reduce wrongful convictions. But if you're serious about reducing wrongful convictions and not executing an innocent person, repealing the death penalty needs to be part of that package.
On that note, the one going back to this whole idea that this is the government that has this power. This is something that we've given the government the ability to do. Um, Personally, one of the scariest prospects, when it comes to government overstepping its bounds, you think of 1984. You think of all of these examples of what the furthest extent of bad government, stuff that happens in these kind of ridiculous extremes that have actually happened. These fascist regimes. The only thing to me that's scarier than the idea of being falsely imprisoned is being falsely murdered. That's that's kind of a really big deal to give that power away, and that's a scary thing. Jay Bren has another question. Can corporate prisons house prisoners for life more cheaply than public or government prisons? Do you guys have any opinion on corporate prisons versus public government prisons, or is that something that's outside of your no personal opinions on this?
I don't.
I wouldn't be able to answer that because I really don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the cost figures.
All right. Well, it's a good question, Jay Bren. We'll have to save that for a different episode. That's one to think about for sure. Okay, let's here. We have. Do you want to provide safeguards? Do you want to provide? Do you want the safeguards and levels of appeal that prevent the government from executing the wrong person, or do you want the death penalty to be cheaper? I think that we've already made that clear that you don't want the death penalty to be cheaper. You don't want the death penalty to cost anything at all because you don't want it to be there. I mean,
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. If you make it cheaper, you're doing away with the safeguards that have saved saved over 100 lives. So if you do away with that, we just need to do away with the system because it's clearly not working at this point. There's been several fixes that have attempted to make it work properly. There's been attempts to make it cheaper too, and what we're finding is each state that does this eventually finds out that this is just an irrevocably broken system, and they just need to repeal the death penalty.
all right. What other innocence reforms are you talking about for the criminals? I thought that is definitely something that you guys talked about. This is an interesting sort of rabbit hole because is it just the death penalty that you guys care about? I know that you are, as we said, your parent group is for broader reforms. Is that correct? It's not just an anti-death penalty group. It is for broader reforms.
That's right. It's Equal Justice USA. They want to work out a criminal justice system that works for everybody.
So
When
the thing that
I guess on the issue of innocence,
go ahead.
the issue of innocence reforms, the best place to go is the Innocence Project, and they do. In addition to working on cases and exonerating innocent people in prison, they also do policy work. And some of the fixes are relatively simple. It can come down to just changing the way that police do lineups, for instance. They've done a lot of studies where they find that if you line everybody up and then ask an eyewitness to pick out who's the person you saw commit the murder, they feel a pressure to pick someone in that lineup. And so when you do lineups in that way, you find a lot more errors. But if you do it in a different way in which you show them one person at a time, is that the person? And then they'll say yes or no. Just changing the lineups in that way can reduce wrongful convictions. And the Innocence Project, they're the experts in that, and they have a number of different policy reforms that they recommend. But that's sort of one of those simple ones that studies have shown is a lot more accurate way to pick out suspects.
Okay, and the reason he said the reason that he wanted to ask that question is that anti-death penalty people use the cost as a way to attack it. I assume what he's trying to say is that would the other changes to the system, would that be more expensive? Is that something that might up the cost when it comes to getting a better result, or more accurate result when it comes to these convictions?
The reason I talk about costs is because I'm a conservative, and the conservative reasons that I listed earlier are why I'm against the death penalty. Pro-life reasons, fiscal responsibility, and limited government. But throwing money at a program that has been proven to not be able to function is not going to fix it. You're just going to be wasting more money.
All right. I think that's a pretty solid response. If there are more questions on that particular line, I'd like to see them. Jay Bren had another one that I wanted to put up there. I thought was interesting. I don't know how particularly possible this is, but it's something. Do you think making a crime's minimum sentence? This goes back to this whole situation of not getting these ridiculous, not having the death penalty on the table, those sort of things. Do you think making a crime's minimum sentence apply to prosecutors guilty of misconduct would lessen that misconduct and railroading? This is, I think, taking it a bit to an extreme, but
yeah, I mean,
the question is whether or not prosecutors should face penalties when they engage in misconduct. We don't have a position one way or the other. One thing I will point out, though, is that the whole idea of prosecutorial, immunity for prosecutors, and them oftentimes facing very little penalties when they engage in serious misconduct. This idea is foreign in a lot of countries. Like in other countries, they do face severe penalties. So, the U.S. is somewhat, I don't want to say unique, but not all countries do it the way that we do.
So, is there anything from your other from your parent group? Do they have any stance on this? Is this something that they're interested in trying to affect any change there?
No.
All right.
No, we haven't worked on that.
If that's the case, let's put this one up there. Are you declaring everyone who is conservative, who is against abortion but for the death penalty, to not truly be a conservative? Is that something that you don't think that?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, people can define themselves. I'm not going to define them for them. And many people who support the death penalty and who are conservatives, at many times I find just have not been educated yet on the failures of the system. Once I sit down and talk with them, most of them are on board. And I also hear that they're pro-life, but they rephrase that after I talk about the death penalty. They say they're pro-potentially innocent life. But that extends to the death penalty too, because many of those were innocent, and many of them were potentially innocent and still sentenced to death.
I used to be anti-abortion but pro-death penalty, so I did change my mind, on the death penalty point. So I don't really find much value in criticizing people who hold slightly different beliefs. I think there's more value. Here's where I'm coming from. Here are the reasons why, and let them consider it for themselves.
What you're saying is that they aren't rhinos if they, believe in the death penalty. I just want to make sure that. This is another interesting question. This is sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
I said I'm not labeling them that.
Hypothetical question: if only truly guilty were ever executed, would you then be okay with the death penalty?
We can talk about hypotheticals, and I mean, we might as well be talking about dreamlands. That's not going to happen. We live in a real world with real mistakes and real consequences, and that's what we need to be talking about, because this is a system that's just not working. Hypotheticals aren't helping us with this either.
I agree with you there. I think that's definitely the case. Let's see here. Let's go to one or two last ones. Let's put this on screen. I think this might actually have So we pay more to have two trials to ensure the jury has its right for the death penalty. Does this not seem fair? Does this not seem fair to make sure the penalty fits the crime? We pay to okay, so the fact that we pay that we have so we pay more to have two trials to ensure the jury has the right for the death penalty. I guess the question here is, since we have juries, this is actually a different question, sort of going to combine with this. On the government abuse side, what about the jurors here? I mean, there is a reason why we have jurors in the system. Is the government abuse angle, accurate when you have jurors involved in the situation?
Well, first of all, it's the government that decides whether or not they're going to seek a death penalty. So first off, it's in the government's court. It's in their own interest once they make that decision. And we've seen that the jurors are oftentimes not told the whole truth and evidence is withheld from them. So this is about government abuse. You can't completely fault jurors in all times for this. And this is also a system that favors the death penalty, because you can't even serve on a capital trial if you don't support capital punishment.
That's kind of something that people need to think about, and I agree that is a big deal. I think that there was another question I just saw fly by. No, not. I don't think that either of you guys are liberals, so I don't think that you want to kill babies. The question is, how come liberals want to kill babies but not kill criminals? Maybe that is something worth discussing. What is the support level from the opposite side of politics? Have you, as you said, you do have a parent group? Is there a liberal brother to you guys that's out there and making those rounds?
I don't know of a liberals concerned about the death penalty out there. It's possible there's one, but most of my time is spent working with conservatives. So if you want to know how liberals feel about it, I would say ask a liberal. Every so often, I do run into others that aren't ideologically aligned with me, but they support repealing the death penalty. They think it's interesting, and they think it's great that there is an issue that can bring the left and right together, because we're in a time right now where bipartisanship is taboo, and this is an issue that can bring everybody together, and I think that's something that excites them.
I agree.
You see,
sorry, go ahead.
You see very interesting coalitions on this issue. I mean, there are very few issues that the Catholic Church and the ACLU come together on, but this is one of them. And, I think despite there not being a lot of bipartisanship right now, we're seeing a few issues that are bringing people together on the left and right. There's the debate over the NSA, the war in Syria. And so you're seeing some issues that are, bringing together these very broad coalitions, and the death penalty fits right in with that.
I think that's absolutely correct. I want to wrap up the show. Thank you guys both very much for being here. From conservatives concerned about the death penalty, do you guys have any last word that you want to just get out there?
Well, JD, I want to say thank you again so much for having us. It's a real pleasure. If people want to have find more information, go to conservativesconcern.org. If you want to send me an email directly, talk to me, tell me your thoughts about this. If you have concerns or anything, just send an email to info@conservativesconcern.org. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. You guys also have a Twitter. Let me first put your website up. And you guys do have a Twitter at CCATDP. So definitely follow you guys. I've seen some interesting stories from there. Hopefully we'll see some more stuff. I'm very excited to read more from you guys. I would love to see some videos. I'd love to see some more stuff and hear more from you guys in the future. So thanks a lot for coming on, Ben and Mark, and maybe we'll have you guys on in the future. I know that I would love to hear if there's something new coming from you guys. That definitely be welcome back on. So thanks again for being.
Be happy.
Thanks so much.
All right. And just to wrap up the show, there's some other stuff that we want to get to. Again, you can find us all on freeradicalnetwork.com. Freeradicalnetwork.com. Find us on on Facebook at /Free Radical Network. This is an article that's like a billion years old that I wrote a little bit about the death penalty, and so check that one out. And tomorrow night we have Prue's view on the news, the 25th episode, which is really, really awesome. I can't wait to see Prue again. And in like right now, I'm gonna head over to go see Liz and Taylor on the Saturday Night Cigar Lounge. So be sure to check that out in a bit. And I think that's it. See you guys in 2 weeks. And thanks for being here. I mean, I'm so glad that people came and are interested in the subject. So thanks a lot and have a great night. And go Jets!